Tonight, Washington reels from a political earthquake. The city is abuzz with speculation, confusion, and disbelief as the news breaks across every major network. In a move that few saw coming, the highest court in the land has upended the status quo, sending shockwaves through the heart of American politics. The Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's signature tariff plan, dismantling a central pillar of his economic agenda. This plan, which had defined much of his administration's approach to global trade, is now in ruins, leaving both supporters and critics scrambling to assess the fallout. The decision sent shockwaves through financial markets and the halls of power. Stocks tumbled as investors tried to make sense of the new reality, while lawmakers on both sides of the aisle rushed to respond to the rapidly evolving situation. President Trump lashed out on social media, calling the ruling a betrayal of American workers. He accused the court of undermining his efforts to put America first, and vowed to fight back, igniting a fresh wave of political debate and public outrage. For years, Trump used tariffs to confront trade imbalances, especially with China, claiming they protected American jobs. His administration argued that these measures were necessary to level the playing field and revive American manufacturing, even as critics warned of higher prices and global retaliation. But the court ruled not on the policy's merits, but on the president's authority to enact it. The justices emphasized the limits of executive power, stating that such sweeping economic actions require congressional approval, not unilateral action from the Oval Office. The verdict sets a precedent on executive power, raising questions that will echo for decades. Legal scholars are already debating the implications, suggesting this decision could reshape the balance between the branches of government and redefine the scope of presidential authority. Billions in collected duties now hang in the balance, and the administration's trade strategy is in tatters. Businesses, workers, and economists alike are bracing for the ripple effects, uncertain about what comes next for the American economy. Americans are left wondering what this reversal means for their jobs, savings, and future. Families across the country are anxiously watching the headlines, hoping for clarity as they try to plan for what lies ahead in these turbulent times. Tonight, uncertainty reigns as the nation grapples with the aftershocks of this historic decision. The coming days will test the resilience of America's institutions, its leaders, and its people, as the country faces a new chapter in its ongoing political and economic story. To understand the impact, let's break down tariffs and why Trump made them his economic weapon. A tariff is a tax on imported goods, making foreign products more expensive and encouraging Americans to buy domestic. Trump wielded tariffs aggressively, targeting countries like China, and aiming to force better trade deals. Using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, he bypassed Congress to impose sweeping tariffs. Critics called it executive overreach. Supporters saw it as a path to revive American manufacturing. The administration claimed tariffs would bring jobs back and generate billions in revenue, but most economists argued the costs were passed to American consumers, raising prices across the board. This fundamental debate, who really pays for tariffs, has fueled controversy from the start. The Supreme Court's decision wasn't about the economic wisdom of tariffs, but presidential authority. The case centered on whether Trump could use the 1977 IEEPA law to impose broad tariffs. The court said no, the law was meant for national security crises, not long-term trade policy. Allowing such use, the justices argued, would give the president unchecked power over foreign commerce, a role reserved for Congress. The ruling invalidates the entire tariff regime built on IEEPA, creating a legal and financial mess. Roughly $90 billion in collected duties could now be subject to repayment to importers. For the administration, it's a political and legal catastrophe, stripping away a key economic tool. The White House must now rethink its approach, facing a global market it has profoundly disrupted. While the legal fight raged on in courtrooms and headlines, American families quietly felt the sting of tariffs in their daily lives. The impact wasn't just a distant policy debate, it was a reality that hit home for millions. Studies projected that tariffs would cost each household over $1,200 in 2025, but these costs didn't show up as a single bill. Instead, they were hidden in higher prices for everyday goods, groceries, clothing, and even school supplies. The auto industry was hit especially hard. Tariffs added hundreds, sometimes even thousands, to the price of a new car, pushing average prices to record highs and making it harder for families to afford reliable transportation. Groceries, wine, electronics, and furniture all saw price hikes as companies passed on costs. Even a simple trip to the supermarket or electronics store became a reminder of how tariffs trickled down to the checkout counter. For families on tight budgets, these increases squeezed finances and forced tough choices, like cutting back on fresh produce, delaying a needed appliance, or skipping a family outing. The administration argued this pain was a necessary sacrifice for long-term gains, promising that the short-term hardship would eventually lead to a stronger economy and more American jobs. But most economists and business owners disagreed, saying the costs landed squarely on American consumers. They warned that the burden was not shared equally, and that small businesses and working families bore the brunt. Companies importing goods faced a tough choice: absorb the hit and risk lower profits, or raise prices and risk losing customers. More often than not, it was shoppers who ended up paying more. The result was clear: Americans paid the price, not foreign countries. The extra dollars spent at the register added up, straining household budgets across the nation. In the end, tariffs that were meant to help often felt like a pay cut for ordinary people, leaving many to wonder if the promised benefits would ever outweigh the real costs they faced every day. Facing backlash, Trump proposed $2,000 tariff dividend checks for American families, funded by tariff revenue. The plan was pitched as a populist win, but critics called it an election-year gimmick. The logistics were daunting, costing up to $600 billion and requiring congressional approval. Now, the Supreme Court's ruling has obliterated the premise. The tariff funds are gone, and the government may have to repay importers. There's no pot of money left for checks, and no clear backup plan. The collapse of the proposal is a major political blow, turning a promised benefit into a symbol of broken policy. For millions who hoped for relief, the promise has vanished, leaving only higher prices behind. The Supreme Court's ruling unleashed chaos and confusion nationwide. Businesses built around tariffs are scrambling. Are the duties gone? Will they get refunds? The government is struggling to provide answers, and the political fallout is fierce. Trump and his allies decry the decision as judicial overreach, while Democrats hail it as a win for consumers. Manufacturing towns feel betrayed, fearing job losses. Elsewhere, families hope for lower prices. The ruling deepens political divides, turning a legal issue into a personal one. Agencies now face the monumental task of unwinding years of tariff policy and possibly refunding $90 billion. The administration, once defending tariffs, must now oversee their dismantlement amid bureaucratic turmoil. The future of the American economy is now uncertain. After years of steady growth and bold policy experiments, the nation finds itself at a crossroads. Investors, business leaders, and everyday Americans are all asking the same question: what happens next? The answer is far from simple, and the path forward is filled with both risks and opportunities. The Supreme Court has ended a major economic experiment, and the fallout will last for years. This landmark decision has sent shockwaves through financial markets and government offices alike, forcing policymakers to rethink their strategies and priorities. Some industries may benefit from lower costs, especially those that rely on imported materials. However, others, like steel and aluminum, now face renewed foreign competition, putting jobs and entire communities at risk. The manufacturing sector, already under pressure, must adapt quickly to survive in this new environment. The loss of tariffs weakens U.S. leverage in global trade negotiations. American diplomats may find it harder to secure favorable deals, and the balance of power could shift toward other major economies. This could have long-term consequences for America's influence on the world stage. Consumers hope for lower prices, but relief may be slow as supply chains adjust. While some goods could become more affordable, the transition will take time, and not all savings will be passed on to shoppers right away. Some companies may keep savings as profit, so price drops aren't guaranteed. Corporate leaders will weigh their options carefully, deciding whether to invest in growth, reward shareholders, or lower prices for customers. The ruling reshapes economic policy and redefines presidential power. Lawmakers and the White House must now navigate a new legal landscape, with less room for sweeping executive action and more pressure to find bipartisan solutions. Trump's agenda is in disarray and the fate of his promised checks is sealed. The administration faces mounting criticism and must quickly pivot to address the concerns of voters and businesses alike. For Americans, the news brings relief for some, anxiety for others. Families, workers, and entrepreneurs are left to wonder how these changes will affect their daily lives, their jobs, and their futures. One thing is certain: the debate over trade, jobs, and America's role in the world is far from over. As the country moves forward, the choices made now will shape the economy for generations to come, and the world will be watching every step of the way.